Good evening and welcome to Ville News. I'm Michael W. Keehan alongside Maddie Heckler, here to give you the latest local, state, and national headlines.
Coming up, we have updates on Donald Trump calling to nationalize elections and a Today Show host's missing mother. Stay tuned because Ville News starts now.
President Donald Trump revealed his desire to nationalize elections on a podcast with former Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino. This comes after previous calls to cancel the midterms and a week after FBI officials raided the Fulton County election offices, looking for evidence to the widely debunked claim that the 2020 election was rigged. On Bongino's podcast, Trump said, quote, "The Republicans should say we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting," end quote. The election clause of the Constitution gives states the power to oversee federal elections, with only Congress able to intervene in certain cases. Nonetheless, Trump has repeatedly suggested attempts to intervene in this year's midterms, causing Democrats and constitutional experts to sound the alarm. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt claimed this was in relation to the passing the SAVE Act, while former White House strategist Steve Bannon suggested having ICE agents at polling areas. Republican Senators John Thune and Rand Paul, however, have resisted the idea, with Paul saying, quote, "That's not what the Constitution says," end quote. The midterms are set to take place on November 3rd, with Pennsylvania holding primaries on May 19th.
Arizona investigators have found signs of forced entry at the Today Show host Savannah Guthrie's mother's home. 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie was last seen at her home on January 31st and was later reported missing by her family on Sunday, February 1st. The investigators found a small amount of blood at Guthrie's home and are treating the residence as a crime scene. Prima County Sheriff Chris Nahos stated in his press briefing that Guthrie's disappearance is, quote, "not dementia-related," end quote, and that she was, quote, "kidnapped, abducted, or otherwise taken against her will," end quote. Savannah and her siblings took to social media to address Nancy's possible kidnappers, saying that their family is aware of the alleged ransom notes that media outlets have received. She said, quote, "As a family, we're doing everything we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices, images are easily manipulated. We need to know without a doubt that she is alive and that you have her," end quote. Savannah and Sheriff Nahos have also stated that Nancy has limited mobility and that she needs to take her daily medication to survive. Investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest.
After our break, we'll have updates on Pennsylvania's famous meteorologist and ice-out protests in Harrisburg. February 2nd was Groundhog Day, where the most famous groundhog in Pennsylvania, Punxsutawney Phil, made his prediction for 6 more weeks of winter. Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow at Gobbler's Knob in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania at around 7:25 in the morning. This was a devastating declaration for those hoping for an early spring. Gobbler's Knob, located just northeast of Pittsburgh, is famous for its Groundhog Day celebration, welcoming thousands of fans annually to hear Phil's winter weather prediction. While Phil is arguably the most famous clairvoyant groundhog there are 89 other registered rodents around the country who also took part in the Groundhog Day meteorological predictions. Phil has been predicting weather since 1886, with about a 39% accuracy rate according to the National Centers for Environmental Information and PopCrave. When he's not working on Groundhog Day, Phil enjoys spending time with his wife Phyllis and 2 children at their home in the Punxsutawney Library or doing PR events around the state.
As of recent, ice-out protests have been happening all over the country, from cities like Los Angeles to New York. Millions of people have been gathering in cities and towns, big and small, to protest ice. These protests have been happening since mid to late 2025, immediately following after President Trump sent ICE agents out into cities across the country. An increase of protests were also observed after the passings of Renee Good and Alex Peretti this past January. These protests started with student organizers across the country posting on social media for anyone and everyone to join in on nationwide walkouts and protests on January 30th. Following that, on Tuesday, February 3rd, the Harrisburg Palestine Coalition, the Students Against Injustice, and the Party for Socialism and Liberation held another ICE Out protest on the Martin Luther King Jr. City Government Building steps. The protest started at 5:30 p.m. and people gathered to protest the presence of ICE in Harrisburg. The protest had a decent turnout, and community members continued to urge Harrisburg officials to cut ties with ICE and to implement ordinances to actively protect the community.
After our break, we'll have updates on a nightclub reopening and the Lancaster Ice Out rally. Ville News will be right back. Less than a year and a half after reopening, the Village nightclub will be closing its doors on March 1st and will be reopening as a La Celestina bar and lounge. As the Village is being sold to a new owner, Eli Ruiz, who said, quote, "Everything is going to be the same. I'm just expecting to bring more of the Hispanic community," end quote. The major difference between the Village and the incoming rebrand is that authentic Hispanic food will be offered at the location in the hopes of bringing a larger Hispanic crowd to the incoming bar. The Village has been operating in Lancaster since 1953, originally opening as the German Village. It was initially located at the southwest corner of Duke and Chestnut Street. It then reopened in its current location at 205 North Christian Street in 1971 after having to make way for the Duke Street parking garage. That's where the nightclub remained and operated until it was sold again in 2022, then recently reopening in September of 2024. Many patrons of the Village are worried for the future of their high fever event, which the nightclub stated on Instagram, quote, "We're working very hard behind the scenes to find High Fever a new home, and that's going to look different for a little bit. We're trying to find a space for March so that you don't have to miss your first Saturday traditions," end quote.
On Friday, January 30th, Lancaster residents banded together as part of the Lancaster Ice Out rally. The rally was held in opposition of ICE presence and activity all across the country, particularly in the city of Minneapolis. Residents and non-residents alike gathered at 4:30 in the afternoon in Reservoir Park in downtown Lancaster. Mental health therapist Jess Fry drove half an hour to join the protest, saying, quote, I think something that's so important is that we don't need proximity to feel compassion and to fight with and stand in solidarity," end quote. From the park rally goers marched up King Street carrying flags, banners, and signs in protest of ICE. The march came to an end at Penn Square, where a vigil was held in memory of Minneapolis residents whose lives were taken by ICE agents. Alongside Lancaster, several ICE Out rallies have been taking place nationwide, with businesses striking and students walking out of schools in solidarity. One business, Rachel's Cafe and Creperie, created drink specials not including ICE, with profits being donated to the Lancaster Neighbor Fund. This fund, created in 2017, works to provide grants to those who are, quote, suffering from hardship related to deportation proceedings in Lancaster County, end quote.
That's all we have for this week for Ville News. I'm Michael W. Keehan.
And I'm Maddie Heckler.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in next week for the latest local, state, and national headlines.